Welcome to iHeart Intellectual Radio Show, Chronicles of Rohn. I'm your host, Alan Campbell, and sitting in with me is the fabulous Karen Ford.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, y'all, we're going to get into some real good stuff. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. But first, I want to say a few things. First of all, I want to say hello to my son, Jared Chase Campbell, who is on his way to college, to a nicer university. I'm not going to say which university, but he is a university man. Appreciate you, son. Appreciate you. Good job. And just so certain people don't feel some kind of way, this was a co-parenting operation. Okay, so let me make sure I say that crystal clear. Parenting operation. Okay. The next thing, my fabulous engineer, my man Earl, had a birthday this past week. And we want to say happy birthday to my man Earl, who does a great job in making us sound good. Most importantly, making us look good. Happy birthday, Earl. Appreciate you. Now, you know what? We gonna get into this real quickly. Tonight's show is called Rome is Burning. Rome is burning as Nero walks through the streets playing a violin. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Nero was the emperor of Rome during the a certain height of debauchery and lewdness and all types of things. But it got to a point where it got out of control, and so in order to gain control of the city, what did Nero do? He burned the city down and blamed on 11 different dozen people. This is where we're at in this country right now. Rome is burning, people. The first thing I want to talk about, and people, go to the YouTube, go to the Harris County. This was an incident in Harris County, Texas, and there's a police dash cam video of a black woman, and once again I say again, a black woman, not African American, but a black woman who was strip searched people. Strip search on the side of the road by two Harris County Sheriff's deputies. Go to the YouTube and type in Harris County Sheriff's strip search female driver. Just type that in, it'll pull it right up. You'll see, and it gives the entire, I think it's 14 minutes of this woman being humiliated. And when I say humiliated, I've seen some videos in my times, but this is just really beyond belief. This woman, and I kid you not, is on the ground with her. They have her on the ground, legs bent backwards, ass in the air with a flashlight shining it up in her. Humiliating thing that you can do to a person. Degradate. It's just really, but we have to understand something too, people. Remember now, they think of us, they don't look at us as human beings. We're animals. I say that, but while it's fresh in my memory, because I'm gonna open up the lines really, really early tonight. So just in case, if you're not sure what unfamiliar with the number, or not sure, you don't have it written down in your Rolodex or in your phone, it is 708-223-8953. That's 708-223-8953 if you want to chime in and get in on this. But this is what actually happened. And I can't make this up. Go to YouTube, type that in. You will see for yourself. Now, last week's show, it was really interesting, but it was really heated. Now, I've never been accused of tap dancing around any topic or subject, and I will, trust me, I'm the kind of person that will show up at an event and slaughter the sacred cow. Not only slaughter the sacred cow, but I will put that bad boy on the barbecue and break out some nice barbecues. My preference, Sweet Baby Ray's, and throw it on there with everybody standing around. And that's what I'm gonna do again tonight. Guess what? I don't give it. But I'm stepping on some sacred cow tonight, and Obama is that sacred cow tonight. Several other people too. We're gonna get the biggest thing that we're talking about right now is the race issue, and it's amazing that we're actually back to that in 2017. What we're looking at is white people acting a damn fool. We're seeing this right before our very eyes. This is not surprising. But what it is, and the only reason that it is surprising and newsworthy, because what? It's white people acting a fool. White people running over other white people. You got the supremacists, the Nazis, and the other alt-right individuals. But see, once again, we have to understand. We have to admit. We have to open our eyes. We have been asleep entirely too long to say, "Oh wow, is this really happening in America?" Yeah, it's been happening. You just don't want to pay attention. But this situation could have been dealt with the alt-right, and that's alt. That's ALT right. Could have been dealt with the previous administration, and I'm talking about Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch. They could have dealt with this. See, this is the proverbial rabid dog running loose at the picnic. Well, first of all, you brought a dog to a picnic. What did you think was going to happen? This is the part to where if you really wanted to smash this organization that has been in existence since the early 1800s, the Ku Klux Klan dates back to the early part of 1835. They were called the Night Riders. I remember that. I remember it so well because my grandmother used to tell us these stories about that, how the Night Riders to the black community or wherever they may be, especially if you lived on the prairie, and they would come there through their terrorizing, raping, killing, whatever they want to do. And see, once again, we're still at this point to where this is white America, white privilege. This is where we're at with this. And so now here we are in 2017. If they really wanted to do something about this, they could have done this a century ago. They could have done this last century in 1910 when they were at its height, when they had over 750,000 active members. We go zip forward to 1969. We talk about the Black Panther Party. Now, the funny part about it, they classified the FBI, Justice Department, classified the Black Panthers as a what? A terrorist group. Mm-hmm. So please don't hand me that. I'm gonna be cool because the word almost slipped out. It almost slipped out. But they could have done that. The same way that the Justice Department classified them, it's the same way that the Obama administration, along with Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, could have classified them as a terrorist group. Understand, people, the word terrorist. When terrorism falls up under when you put fear into people or community. This is what this is. They didn't do it. And it's a lot of people, and over the past week, I've ran into several people who are really, really upset with the previous administration. They really are. And I can't blame them because this man sold us a dream. And then some of us sleep in that dream.
I don't know if I even want to touch that one, but I agree with you too. Obviously, I agree with you to an extent. I know that there were lots of promises made during both of President Obama's election campaigns. And there were things that he promised to do. There were things that he said he was going to do that did not come to pass. And then there were things that did happen. I mean, his legacy is, I don't think it's 50-50. It's probably 30-70.
Yeah.
So there were some things that he did do. Obviously, the Lilly Ledbetter Act and some other things, equity in pay, and people can. There's good and bad with the Affordable Care Act, but it did give a number of people health care, myself included, and especially given the fact that you could get it and it didn't matter if you had an existing condition or not. So there were some things that were good, but there were some other things that were promised that did not come to pass. And again, I think it's because, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it now, and I'm going to say it out loud publicly. I think it was because President Obama was trying to pacify, in particular, he was trying to pacify white America, because when he was elected president, the fear running rampant through white America was that they were going to look up that he was going to have an all-black cabinet,
correct,
which obviously he did not have. That the heads of all of the police departments across the United States would be black. People would be running everything. Well, first of all, we know constitutionally that ain't going to happen.
There is
We have,
no.
we have a division between government, there's states' rights, there's municipal rights, and all the rest of that stuff. But there was just this blatant fear that once this black man came into office, he was going to do what white people have been doing since they have been running this country. And that is filling every position with white folks. They have filled every cabinet with white folks.
Mhm.
I remember the first time a black person got on a cabinet. And for a long time, when that started happening, we were always the director of housing and urban
Housing and
development.
urban, yes.
We were always heading HUD. None of the financial stuff, nothing like Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice, nothing, not the environment, nothing. It was always HUD. I don't remember. I think the first one might have been Patricia Harris, and I could be wrong. And if I am, I apologize. But I'm just saying that for for centuries, that white males have been president of the United States. They have stacked every deck, every department, every what other with white folks, and nobody coughed, nobody blinked, nobody said anything. A black man gets in, and all of a sudden, everybody's shaking in their shoes that he is going to have the White House, or that every cabinet position was going to be filled with black folks. Here's another thought. Why not? Why shouldn't he? Why couldn't he? There are just as many capable black people who could have run Homeland Security. Obviously, he had Eric Holder running the Justice Department, the State Department, uh, the EPA. There are black folks in every area of government. And surely he could have found somebody black to head the cabinet, even though we know they would have had to been approved by the Senate. But he could have found candidates all the way through the black community who could have done some of those things. But instead, he did what everybody else does. He got his cronies. Those of us here from Chicago know Arnie Duncan was never
Uh,
worth two dead flies. And the moment that he appointed him Department of Head of Education
you already
Department,
knew.
Lord, I was screaming, not Arnie Duncan, anybody but Arnie Duncan. So once again, what he exactly said he wasn't going to do, and that was play the good old boys game.
Exactly. And see, the thing what people didn't realize is that Obama and Artie Duncan are basketball buddies.
Yeah,
They play
from Harvard.
basketball from Harvard. So if you're talking about the good, and that's the whole thing, exactly right, is that Obama could play the good old boy game. And the other thing that people don't understand, people really, and see, people, you really need to do your history on a lot, do your research, do not so much your history, but do your history. When is sworn in. They see when there's three ceremonies. A lot of people don't know, and that's because either they've been asleep or they don't want to know, or they don't care. Sleep. I mean, there's three ceremonies. There is the public. There is the public swearing in, and that's when you see him standing on the Capitol steps with his Bible or Bibles and being sworn in by the Chief Justice. Then there's a private ceremony that is held in the White House with the same two people, the president, close family members, and the Chief Justice, maybe a member or two of Congress. But also secret ceremony that only two people are in the two or three people, maybe five are in the room. That's the incoming president, and then that is members of the secret society. See, there's these are things that are so deep that people don't want to hear or talk about. This is how this really goes. So now Obama played his agenda was, I'm going to pacify masses. This is me pacifying the masses. This is not about race. This is not about class. I need to pacify white America. And when he said his famous speech, his BS speech, that This is not about blacks. It's not about white. Hey, man, wait a minute. I guess you forgot. Who helped put you there? This is the proverbial us, black people, being put in a position of power, and we completely forget the people who put us there. Completely forgot. Okay, guess what? You had the first 4 years. Okay. Listen, y'all, I kind of blew that, and I'm going to need another 4 years. So I would greatly appreciate it if you would give me another 4 years. I'm going to do a whole lot better. Guess what? You crash and burn, dude. Crash and burn. This is the guy that just completely crash and burn. And you want us to accept that. Now you got this dude in office, the Joker, who told you who he was from the very beginning. And now everybody's so upset. They want to say this dude's a racist. They want to say this dude is alt-right. No, this dude is not a racist. This dude's a businessman. This dude is exactly who white America is. The problem is that you all have been asleep and saying, hey, this is what this is. No. And then the unfortunate part is that there are people who are taking his words, running down the street with it, with a burning flag, talking about save the South and all this. Listen, people, the South laws, you don't get, and unfortunately, we live in a country of participation trophies. Mm-hmm. And this is where we're at. A lot of this is stemmed from going back to the previous administration, but we fast forward to where we're at right now is where these people are upset because you're tearing down statues of Robert E. Lee. The dude lost miserably. I'm gonna show you how miserably that they humiliated Robert E. Lee. Not only did they make him surrender at Appomattox, but when you go, if anyone's ever been, if you haven't been, go. This is an education for my generation, the previous generation, and the one that's coming after me. If you've never been to Arlington, go to Arlington Cemetery. There is a mansion that sits at the top of the hill. That is Robert E. Lee's house. That is what they call the spoils of war. And to humiliate him, what they did is that they turned his plantation, his property, into a burial ground. Humiliate anyone no more than that. I don't know what it is. But we want to erect statues of this dude. In fact, at one point, I wasn't too much really digging the part about Stone Mountain. I've been to Stone Mountain several times. And on Stone Mountain, there is a relief carved on the side of it, and the relief is of the three Confederate generals, men of the South. You had Davis, it was Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and I believe Stonewall Jackson. I believe that's who it was. But they had all three of them on the wall. Now they're talking about actually removing that. To a certain degree, it's a nice portrait for if you're a Southerner, but for people to say, okay, you lost. Losers do not get you. We're the only country that erects or put up or honors people that lose. We're the only one. Now, Karen was saying earlier, I think he said there was only 13 states in the Confederacy, but there are 31 schools named after Robert E. Lee.
200.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Correction.
Over 200.
Over 200 named
in 31 states.
That is ridiculous. Arguments that people saying, why are we doing away with the history of the South? Because we're the only country that honors people. You're not going to go to Germany, as you said. You're not going to go to Germany and find a statue of Adolf Hitler. That you're not going to go to Japan and find a statue of the Northern Fleet commander of the Japanese Navy after they dropped the bomb twice on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make sure they got everybody. They wanted to make sure that. They say, well, we wanted to make sure the first one, but we got a spare just in case you didn't get the message. You got mail. That's exactly what happened. But nobody's doing it. We're the only country that does that. The only country that hey, you lose. If you're running down, if your child and it was and I said to myself, I said, my son or daughter ever came home and they say, look, Dad, I got a trophy. I say, for what? Participation. I'm gonna throw it right out the window. And then I'm going to the school and I'm gonna tell the teacher, you can take the rest of them and then you can do something else with it. Make sure that the star is pointed up when you do. doing is that you're telling these people that mediocrity is acceptable. What they want you to believe in the South, that hey, even though we lost, please accept this as no, we don't have to accept anything, because that is a dark time in American history because of what it symbolized. We talk about the Confederate flag. Truthfully, yeah, we when we talk about that, and I've mentioned this once before, Confederate flag symbolic with slavery, but that was due when the country was divided. You had the United States of America and you had the Confederate States of America. So they had to have a flag too. But if you really want to talk about it, slavery, when the reason slavery had to end, because it wasn't because, hey, we need to make sure that all men are equal. No, it was an economic, it was a numbers game. It was economics. It was for economics. And moving fast forward, remember now, we're still, is it 3/5 of a man? That's still in the Constitution to this very day. Once again, going back to the previous administration, you could have created an executive order or amended. The president has the power to write amendments. Say, hey, we need to change this so we can get people to feel the same way, that everybody has equality.
That has to pass.
But right. It has to pass by the Senate, but it didn't hurt for someone to write it down and say, let me run it up the proverbial flagpole and see who salutes.
That is true. Well, one of the conversations, obviously the conversation that we're having tonight, a lot of it stems from what happened recently in Charlottesville, but we know for a fact that this is just another manifestation of what's been going on since we have been on this continent.
Correct.
It's changed faces, it's changed times. We hear about things instantaneously because of the internet and stuff, but this is just another installation or another leg of what's been going on. Now, you mentioned Trump being a businessman. He's a businessman. He's also a racist businessman, because we knew before he was elected some of the things, he was he was being investigated by the Justice Department.
Correct.
Because he did not want to rent to black people. His casinos did not want to have black workers out on the casino floor.
And not to interrupt you, but he not only what he openly, this wasn't something that he hid. He openly admitted, no, I do not rent to black people. This
and openly embraced David Duke.
Yes, he did.
And openly embraced the endorsement of the KKK, among other things. And just as even to go as far, when you talked about the lady who was strip searched, and the fact that he thought it's absolutely positively okay to grab a woman in her privates. And I remember reading right after his election that those kind of things were happening across the United States, and kids were saying, well, the president said it was okay. But I also remember when President Obama was elected, there were schools that would not let kids wear Obama t-shirts to school.
Yeah.
Because they were saying, well, they were making a political statement. Well, not acknowledging the fact that that a black man became president is a political statement. It's a political statement. So we have this, contradictory idea in this country that it's okay for me. What's okay for me is not okay for you. But we were also talking about the fact that one of the things that we're seeing is that white folks are scared. They've always been scared. When you think about the fact that one of the things that scared them the most during slavery time was a black person who could read. Because then you could read, then they would realize something is not kosher here, something is not right, and so they kept us from reading. And look at what's happening with our educational system now. Little Johnny is coming out of school. He can rap, but he can't read.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you look at those things. You look at the fact that white people are starting to realize that the mainstream does not look like it doesn't look like them anymore. So the girl next door doesn't look like Sandra Bullock. The girl next door looks like Khadijah. And that's starting to scare them just a teeny tiny bit, but it shouldn't, because when you think about it, this country, which was taken from people who were already here, was created for the empowerment, for the betterment, for the enrichment of white folks.
Mm-hmm.
We just playing the game.
That's it.
It was not meant for us to participate in. And then once we got to the point where we could participate, every time we get to the point where we start to make strides, they change the rules.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I want you to hold your point on that. Hey, we're going to take a little break here on the Chronicles of Rohn at iHeart Intellectual Radio. When we come back, hey, if you have a comment or a suggestion for a topic for a show, hey, leave us a message on the voicemail at 872-267-1381. That's 872-1381. Here, give us and also to my sponsors, Nubian Beauty of Hair. Check out their websites for their fabulous products and luxuryhairdirect.com/buy Nubian4. Give us a call here at the show when we come back at 708-223-8953. And welcome back, Ron. I'm your host, Alan Campbell. Sitting in with me is my co-host, Karen Ford.
Good evening.
We are talking about Rome is burning as Nero walks through the streets playing a violin. And this is where we are at with this. A lot of this. And see, we have to sidetrack for a minute. The Japanese have a very prolific saying, and he said, this Japanese guy said this, and he said it best. He said that we spend a lot of time assigning blame and not addressing the problem. In Japan, they fix the problem, not the blame. I'm gonna say it again. Fix the problem, not the blame. Because once you fix the problem, there is no one to blame. Their way is better. Fix the problem, not the blame. And this is where we're at. Right now, we are blaming 11 different dozen people on why we are where we're at as a country, as a society, and damn sure as a people. We're blaming everybody. We don't have social programs. We don't have economic development. We don't have this. We don't have that. That's blame. We need to fix the problem. The problem is sending to the elected officials. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. We're sitting here and we're electing people because they're black. Oh, and third, we're electing people because they're black. If you didn't catch the third one, please refer back to number 1 and 2. And this is the problem that we're faced with right now. What we're having, this maelstrom that we're dealing with, such as the woman that was stripped on the side of the road. That could have been somebody's mother, someone's girlfriend. This was never addressed way back when we had the opportunity. Loretta Lynch, Barack Hussein Obama should have addressed this when there was an outcry, when you had police officers killing black motorists. This is the once again to you see a problem, fix it. We need to address this. Now, let's take Jeff Sessions, who is definitely a racist. He does not hide that. And the funny part about it, my grandmother used to say, you know what, when a white man admits to you he's a racist, you can trust him. You know why? Because you know where he's coming from.
Exactly.
You know where he's coming from. That's the one you and the thing about it, she said that's the one that you don't have to be afraid of him because he done already told you. It's the one who thinks and it's the one you need to be most fearful of. Because he's the one that's sitting there plotting with the one that you know is a racist to do you in. Take Jeff Sessions. Now Jeff Sessions is head of the Justice is the Attorney General, which the Justice Department is under the Attorney General as well as the FBI. Jeff Sessions is now launching investigations and probes and other things into what? Civil rights violations. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to do when this type of thing happens. So you don't tell me that you don't have the power, or don't tell me that you had other things going on that were more important than doing your job. Here it is. You had, and the only reason that he has to do this, and the unfortunate part about this guy is that and right now his methods are actually useful or needed, because this is a guy who's going to show you everybody, hey y'all, we got white people acting a fool out there, and we got these hillbillies coming down out of the mountain acting a damn fool. We got to straighten that out because it's bad for business, because you're attacking other white people. But you didn't say anything when they're talking attacking black people. You didn't say anything. No, because it's not in your best interest. It is not in your best interest. We have to start opening our eyes and paying attention and get from it. Like you said, little Johnny know how, we talked about the education. Little Johnny can rap, but he can't read worth the plug nickel. He can't even write his name. I was looking at an application one day, and I couldn't believe the penmanship that this woman had. I mean, it looked like she wrote it with it looked like she wrote it with a chicken foot. And I'm supposed to make heads or tails out of this. This is the problem that we have. We won't elevate ourselves, and then we're looking at the rest of the world and saying, "Wow, what are we doing?" And not on top of that, the rest of the world is looking at us and saying, and this is supposed to be the face of democracy, when they can't even rights under control. They can't get anything right over there. So why would I even listen to them? Why?
Well, one thing you said that I do, and I hope someone calls about this, the rest of the world. The rest of the world always looks towards the United States. It always has, and certainly has, since the beginning of the UN. The United States is a permanent part of the UN Security Council, one of the 5 countries that's a permanent part of the UN Security Council. So people are always looking at the United States, around the United States, to see what it is we're doing. And we are quick to point fingers, to point blame. We talk about Tibet and China. We talk about civil rights violations. We talk about human rights violations all over the world. We talk about genocide. We talk about female mutilation. We talk about all kinds of things, but we do not look inward. We do not look inward. We do not call terrorism when it's inward. I still have yet to hear anybody in a position of power say that Timothy McVeigh was a domestic terrorist.
Go ahead. I'm going to tell you why.
He was. And he was one of the worst terrorists we've ever had. September 2001 notwithstanding. But you look at that, and you look at the folks who have committed terrorism all of the time. When the FBI called the Black Panthers a terrorist group, simply because they said, no, we're not going to turn the other cheek. If you shoot me, I'm going to shoot you. And for those of you who are movie aficionados, you remember that scene in The Untouchables when Sean Connery told Kevin Costner, "Way we shoot one of yours, or we hit one of yours,"
right?
And he says, "We put one of
Yours
yours in the morgue." That's the Chicago way. See, that's and that was simply what the Panthers were saying, because you have been blowing up churches. You've been bombing churches. You've been hanging innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
You've been killing people for trying to exercise their right to vote, which they have acquired since the late 1800s with the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. You call us a terrorist group when we say we're not going to take it anymore. And what fascinates me even more about that is the idea that America always gets, or white America gets its underwear in a bunch when we start saying we're not going to take it anymore.
Right.
I read an article earlier this year. They were discussing the movie Birth of a Nation, which is out on video now. And
very
the
good
fact
movie if
that,
you haven't seen it.
There was all the hoopla about the young man who made the movie, and of course he was acquitted. He didn't even go to court for wrongdoing, for rape, supposedly. But I remember one of the critics talking about, well, it wasn't as good of a movie as 12 Years a Slave. And I remember even talking to a friend about that, white male I know who also happens to be a sociology professor. And he was extolling the virtues of 12 Years a Slave and talking about, well, Birth of a Nation was so-so. And I told him point blank, I said, you know why you think that? Because Birth of a Nation, they killed white folks.
Right.
They decided we've had enough. And so we're going to kill white folks. And so when you saw those critics panning Birth of a Nation, not because it was poorly acted, because it wasn't.
No.
Not because it was necessarily poorly written, because it wasn't. But they extolled the virtues of 12 Years a Slave because here's a black man who was obedient to a white man to save him, and black folks got beaten, black folks got raped, and all the rest of the stuff, but they took it stoically. They did not fight back. And so they love good black people movies. It's one of the reasons why they love Gone with the Wind. They because on Saturday, on Sunday, the slaves were out there singing the massa. And so they have this idea that slavery was just happy, happy, joy, joy, even though we know 12 Years a Slave was a true account.
Correct.
And obviously he did not show, and they did not show in the movie, the atrocities that were in the book. If anybody is to go out and read the book, they did not show all of the atrocities. And of course, they couldn't have had 2 hours. And actually, the fear was if they'd shown all of the atrocities that were in the book, as in Birth of a Nation, they were probably scared that black folks were going to take to the streets and start shooting every white folk that they knew. But I digress. But it just never ceases to amaze me that as long as we take this kind of behavior and keep turning the other cheek, good blacks. But when we say enough is enough, and not necessarily that we take to arms,
right,
because we have yet to do that, enough is enough, and we start calling the thing what it is, then all of a sudden we're the problem. I got no problem saying somebody's racist when they're racist. I got no problem saying something is racism when it's racism. And for those folks to do what they did, for those police officers to strip search that woman and then be told that is it
was said that they were operating in the scope of their office. Now, I want to clarify something. A strip search is legal when it is done in the proper manner, meaning the proper manner is that the individual is taken to the station and it is done in a closed area where that person has privacy. They have privacy and their dignity is protected. Hey, we got a caller coming in right now. Welcome to the show, Chronicles of Rohn. Who do we have and where are you calling from?
This is Jay from Georgia.
Oh, what's happening? Jay from Georgia. What's
Good, good.
happening?
So, yeah, you guys are definitely having a fairly decent conversation. I want to jump in on a couple of things. First thing first, when we talk about race, when we talk about a lot of the issues that are happening, I think we're failing to realize that this is not as clear cut as race. And one would be very ignorant to limit it to just the scope of race. This is no longer about race because the lines are too far blurred. This is more so about class. Race is the distraction. We have to be very careful that we're not missing, and most of us already have. I wanted to touch on a couple of things that you guys said earlier. One thing was when we were dealing with the birth of a nation. Now, one thing that is extremely interesting to me is that, unfortunately, we keep missing a lot of things that are right in front of us. The remake of The Birth of a Nation was really that. The original movie of The Birth of a Nation was done in 1915 by D.W. Griffith.
Right.
Now, this was also the same writer and producer of Gone with the Wind. And this particular film was actually a propaganda film.
Yeah.
And the propaganda film was going on the guise that should the Negro actually get into power,
what will happen?
Mongrel, as they would call it, would destroy all of the civility they have made, and that it is up to the conscience of the white man to restore order. And this is kind of important because this particular propaganda was so accepted that this movie previewed at the White House and got the full seal of approval from the President of the United States at that time, which was Woodrow Wilson. And we understand that, which also goes into the problem that we're having today, which is this whole misunderstanding of white supremacy. That is not to say that it doesn't exist. An inherent cancer that has been beyond the surface of every facet of our government. And the problem is, whenever you put God into the picture, then the holiness of him will continually cause whatever is not holy in you to be drawn to the surface. It has no choice. We put God in our money, we put God on this and God on that, and we're a godly nation and we expect for this God to work in our behalf. Then you have to deal with this thing called sin. You have to deal with this thing called slavery. And we've been brought to this table again and again and again how to deal with it. At the beginning of your show, you guys had made mention about, of course, the failed president, Barack Obama, and how he went after trying to fix some things, but he failed miserably. Part of what he failed on was just being a president and understanding the full weight of the office, which is why Donald Trump and any president, including Bush and Clinton, have been more successful, and they will be more successful because they understood Donald Trump, in a sense, as extreme as he is, to the full extent of his office. That's what a president does. Until we have redefined the guidelines, the scope. The reason why this is extreme is because we're used to the passivity of a previous administration, to a government that doesn't function but makes excuses. We're used to a government that tells you in open gesture, we will get you health care, you get us in. We will get you your taxes, you get us in. Press will tell you we can't make it happen. We're getting sidelined by this particular fashion or that particular fashion. You're the president. Particularly when Barack Obama and his administration, and you touched on this earlier with Eric Holder, whatever you want to call her, Lynch, those were probably two of the most incompetent law enforcement officials that you could ever place in the office. They brought shame to the entire office because they failed to execute any weight as it stands in the form of civil rights for citizens. It's not about black or white. Because if you get caught on that, you'll miss the bigger picture. What happened to Trayvon Martin, what happened to Sandra Bland, whatever happened to Mike Brown, all of these, let's take that out of the picture. These were citizens of the United States whose civil rights were violated, period. You have to understand what the term civil rights means. You have to understand what a right of a citizen is as opposed to a subject. And many of us are ignorant of the two. If you are a citizen of Rome as opposed to a subject of Rome, there are certain things that a centurion cannot do to you. He cannot execute justice upon you in the middle of the street. You are to go to a tribunal, and that is when the sentence is executed. Now, the rules of a subject is different. The rules of a subject is, if I seem or this deems itself to be something I need to eliminate immediately, and I will take that up with the said owner at that time. And again, we have to be very clear to understand the system. We're not dealing with race anymore.
No.
It's class. Sweet Polly Purebred, the young lady who was killed last week, God rest her soul. And 90% of the conversation that we're having is because she wasn't black.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If she had been Shaquanda from 63rd Street, it would have been, well, Shaquanda was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She didn't have the right permit. She was in the way. And so I want us to make sure that we're very clear that we don't miss the boat, because we are. This whole thing with race will get us twisted because we can't afford to get caught up in that. We have got to make people who we've sent accountable to make our voices heard. As I've said many times on this show, then starts to dictate international policy and international mandates. And we have to be extremely careful because we've already been betrayed once. The one time that we had someone in office who could have righted 90% of all of that, what we're dealing with now, it's what we call the sins of our father. If you don't deal with something in your generation and your children have to deal with it, I can guarantee you it will be 3 times worse. And our previous administration had the ability to fix the Constitution on the 3/5 human, had the ability to go back and fix and to amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what they chose to do, again, as a coward move, is we're only going to deal and emphasize on employment. We're not going to deal with the civility of it in Voting Rights Act. We're going to really put the emphasis on and people with disabilities and transgender issues.
Yeah, hey, I totally agree.
We got to understand what we're dealing with. Now you have a person who's Donald Trump, literally won the election because of the failed policies of the previous administration. That's my 2 cents, guys.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, caller. Appreciate you.
Got another caller.
Oh, well, we lost him. Hey, we're still taking calls here at the station, 708-223-8953. And to piggyback off the caller, and see, this is the thing that we have to understand. And I said this last week. We have to understand this is about class now. This is about class. This is no longer about race. And as he said, the woman that was killed last week in Charlotte, Sweet Polly Purebred, now it becomes a national issue because why? She was white. And as we often say on the show sometimes, if this had been Shaquanda Lakeisha Jones from 63rd and wherever in Inglewood or Compton or Philadelphia or the roughneck area of Philadelphia or the Bronx or from the BK housings in Queens, not one single solitary person.
I'd also like to address it. Now, I agree with a lot of what the caller said, but not everything. And it's not necessarily because I disagree. It's because you said something about finding solutions. So what it seemed to me and what I got was that one of the issues is that we're still being treated like subjects. You want to talk about subjects and citizens?
Yes.
Now, technically, we've been citizens since the end of slavery and the passage of the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments to the Constitution.
Well, and that's true. But see, here's the thing. Like I said, that now on paper,
we're citizens.
On paper, we're supposed to be citizens.
Well, on paper, we're supposed to be citizens. However, and this is where racism plays a part because it's got nothing to do with class. We have yet to come into the fullness of citizenship.
Correct.
In this country. Other people have come here. There are a number of books. There's a great book that I love called How the Jews Became White. And we have another caller.
We have another caller. Hey, welcome to the show, the Chronicles of Rohn. Who do we have on the line and where are you calling from?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. This is Jay again. I had one more point, and I do apologize. As it relates to the whole situation of citizenship, we need to, excuse my French, we have to be very, very clear. The amendments do not change, and they do not explicitly repeal, which is the most important thing, the issues of what the Constitution had originally placed into play. They skirted around dealing with, they tried to say it with, it doesn't matter about race, creed, such and such and such and such. And that's fine. That should cover it all. The problem is when you have, at the same token, this legislation that was written, but then the policies say something that are different. Or they instrument something different. Prime example. If you look at everything that has just happened, even Charlottesville, even some of the protests that have happened around the country, did you notice that there was an increased amount of militia that was in place and that were stationed at a lot of the Confederate posts? And I'm specifically talking about the protests in Dallas, Texas, the protests in San Antonio, Texas, the protests that even happened in Charlottesville. Now, this is important because militia is not law enforcement.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Militia is armed personnel who are private citizens who have taken up the call to protect a particular purpose or particular function as they see fit, apart from law enforcement. Now, this is extremely troubling is Black folks did this as in the form of the Black Panthers or any other militia group that we were called, and we were completely disbanded. You look at Fred Hampton, you look at the folks from Detroit. And so what I'm saying is, even though technically, as you said, on paper we're supposed to be free, the very legislation that goes into place strangles us. Look at the Black Wall Street situation that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, approximately 2 years after the release of the film, The Birth of a Nation. Look at the issue that happened with Rosewood, where Blacks were butchered. And these were free Blacks who were successful, who were prosperous, but were denied the ability to even have guns, specifically in Tulsa in the Black Wall Street situation. Black folks were brought down to the courthouse and they were disbanded of their guns. These were ex-veterans from World War I. Even in today, how many of us as African Americans would even qualify or would be allowed to qualify to get a gun license that will allow us to go to most gun shops and get 1 or 2 rifles or 1 or 2 guns at any public standing? Our problem is legislation. We have people that smile in our face in public and betray us in the back room.
Absolutely.
And that is probably the hugest disjustice that we're seeing, which is why we're having so much of an issue with not even being on a level playing field of our aggressor.
You're right. I you know what? And
so we've kind of got to address that and not skirt around it, because you know your Danny Davises, your John Lewises, your Maxine Waters, those are the most dysfunctional people you will find.
Right.
There are Indian reservations, and I have to say this. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Hey, caller.
Reservations
caller.
that have more power than our black people.
Okay.
That has been given to them by Congress.
All right.
Including militia groups.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you again. Thank you. Hey, that's all the time we have here for the Chronicles of Rohn here at iHeart Intellectual Radio. I'm your host, Alan Campbell, and Karen Ford sitting in with me. Appreciate you. And let me shout out to my sponsors at Nubian Beauty of Hair, Luxury Hair, and reach them on their website at luxuryhairdirect.com/bynubian 4 dots. That's luxuryhairdirect.com/bynubian 4 dots. Hey, you can't eat religion and grits won't get you to heaven. See you all next week.